this was really like my first job. Like I have no background in higher education. All I ever wanted to do was manage rock bands.
Did students ever be like, I didn't know you had tattoos?
The tattoos are for me. I always like put them in spots that were hidden.
It's the Ryan Leckey Show. Welcome to the Ryan Leckey Show.
Hey, what is going on, peeps? Welcome back, fam, to the Ryan Leckey Show. And I'm super stoked to introduce you to today's guest. She is innovative, creative, and blazing all sorts of trails in the world of academia, Northeastern Pennsylvania. The one and only CEO and Presidente, Katie Leonard from Johnson College based in Scranton. How's it going?
It's going great.
Yeah, and look, I always say we don't want to bury the lead before people think like, oh my God, she's going to talk about different classes they offer and blah, blah, blah the whole time. We might dive into a little of that, but we are going to literally, I'm ripping off the Band-Aid because we're going to talk about some of the ways that you're sort of blowing up the world of academia in a great way because there is such a demand for trade and technical workers out in the field, but there's not enough of them.
Right.
Like your air conditioning when it blows out, right? Your heating unit, your electrical, when your car breaks, right? Not enough people are going into these fields, and it's like we're going to look ahead to the future. What does that look like if more and more people don't take these jobs and go into these fields because the pay is going up for these types of positions?
Absolutely.
So we're going to unpack that. We're going to talk about you as a trailblazer in academia because you're really the second female president at Johnson College in Scranton. And since when?
1912 we were founded.
All right. So if people are listening to this, watching this, they've never even heard about Johnson College. Maybe they did. We're going to pull back the curtain because we're going to unpack the good stuff and give them the tea.
Sure.
Johnson College, again, recap. When was it founded? Give me the history of this place.
Sure. So I love to say that we're founded and grounded in industry. We were founded by a wealthy coal baron at the time, Orlando S. Johnson, and he was so visionary. So this was back in 1912, right? So he, from the very beginning, he said he wanted a trade school where men and women could learn useful arts and trades. So think about that. 1912, before women even had the right to vote, Orlando was that innovative to say like, nope, this is the future. We have to include everybody and really promote what he kind of saw was going to be such a demand.
And I think what's interesting about that, there were a number of universities and colleges, I mean, in Northeastern Pennsylvania alone, and other parts of the country, that at one point it was all guys, all females at this school, right? But you said from day one, men and women.
And that's why I always like to mention that, especially being like a woman leading the institution. I'm like, no, Orlando had this vision.
Yeah, and you're doing a ton of innovative stuff there that we're going to get to. But I think first off, let's talk about the bottom line of the need for trade and technical workers. What does that mean? Define that for us.
Sure.
And why is it crucial when people, maybe their kids are like, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up, right? One, why should people explore this field? But why does this matter to get these jobs filled and to get these people trained?
Well, I think on a very practical level, like you opened with, think about, calling today for whether it's a plumber or someone to fix your air conditioning or, getting an appointment for your car, your truck, even like, your animal that you care about so much. Like these positions are in demand. Like we're growing, but we still can't produce our quality technicians and technologists fast enough. There's that much of a demand. My goal was to get us to 500 students by 2020, and we blew that goal out of the water. And now we're at 600, and we're trending well again going into this next academic year. So our students and the skills that they bring to the table, not just the technical skills, but the soft skills as well, that's what employers are looking for, and that's what's so in need.
And when you talk about 600, is that per year enrollment, or walk me through where that number stands?
So we're 2-year technical. So we do all 2-year associate degree programs or 1-year academic certificate programs. So that's for all of our, 18 programs of study. And then we have continuing ed on top of that. And we also have our industry fast track program, which serves high school students.
Yeah, and we can get back to that. But I think first, when people hear about the trade and technical programs, when somebody who's coming out of high school being like, yo, why should I do that? I want to be a TikTok creator. I want to be on YouTube. Talk about, not only, the education component and how ultimately what they could be trained in could help homeowners, et cetera, right in the field. But ultimately, what are some of these positions paying? Why does this matter? Because that's what people care about. What am I going to make?
Yeah. So again, there's so in demand, and not just the pay. So a lot of these positions, in Northeastern Pennsylvania, start, we have interns making $19 to $21 an hour, and that's just as an intern, and it only goes up from there. Some positions, when you look at like welding, diesel truck, I mean, some students are making 30 plus, 40, $50 an hour because they're that in demand. And on top of that, employers are coming up with more and more ways to get creative in terms of the benefits they offer potential employees. So they'll not only do tuition reimbursement if they're in college and working currently, but if they're working there afterwards, they'll give them a whole separate stipend to pay down their student loan. So employers are really finally starting to try to get creative to like retain, attract and retain workers.
And how much competition is out there from colleges for these types of programs? Like, do you compete against a lot of schools, or are you like sort of the it factor?
So we are the only 2-year technical college in all of northeastern Pennsylvania. I would say the next closest, if you're looking strictly 2-year technical, is probably Penn College out in Williamsport. And they do have dorms. We don't. So we're, right now we're all commuter. But our students, we have students coming from 60 miles away sometimes, and
Wow. Now,
So
here's the
it's
thing.
college.
So I have known you for about 16 years. I worked with you in all sorts of capacities through your work at Johnson College. Like my last chapter when I worked in television, we did a lot of stuff in morning TV. But let's talk about how did you get into the world of academia? And ultimately, I love your story, right? You're the second female to take over Johnson College as the president and CEO, which is awesome because you're so innovative and creative and blazing trails. And we're going to come back to like just how you get stuff done so fast. And I love that about you. But how did you get into this world of academia?
Well, it's funny. Like I have no background in higher education. I never thought, if you told me that I would have my doctorate and then not only have my doctorate, but be working for an institution of higher education, I would have said you were crazy. Like all I ever wanted to do was manage rock bands, like growing up. So
Get out!
Yeah, I grew up in New York, and I was, had access to any concert I wanted to go to, any music. I met, a lot of like rock stars along the way, which is awesome. But then I realized, like many of our students, like when you want to do something, you're not quite sure what the path is. And then you're like, am I really going to make money at this? So I did the next best thing and went to York College of Pennsylvania, majored in English, where I was sure I'd have.
Okay.
But like, honestly, people say, do you really
That was
use
your bachelor's,
English?
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you really use your English degree? And I'm like, all the time. And I always stress that with our students too at a 2-year technical college, those soft skills, communication, it's so important. So I had a great time at York, and I fell in love with Pennsylvania because of like the hiking and the trees, and there was just so much to do outdoors, and I realized how much I loved that. So, I stayed here, but my background is really community and economic development. I was a marketing coordinator for a law firm, and then I was the executive director for WellSpan's sort of community health arm down in New York. And, when I moved up here, this was really like my first job in higher education, and I did marketing and fundraising
At Johnson College. That was your
Yes.
foot in the door.
Yeah.
What's funny? I've known you for 16 years. I didn't know the other stuff in the rock band things.
Yeah.
This is why I love these chats. So you come here to Scranton, Pennsylvania, right? You have a whole new chapter going on, and you started in marketing at
did,
Johnson College.
yeah.
Tell me how you worked your way up. Did you ever say to yourself, you know what, I want to be the president of this place someday?
No, again, if anybody told me that, I think Dr. Ann, my predecessor, probably saw it in me before I did, because I was very creative. I saw a gem in Johnson College. I feel like it was, like one of the best kept secrets. And, I started out just talking with the staff and the faculty, asking them what they saw, in Johnson College, because I needed that information to do my job well, whether it was fundraising or marketing. I was reaching out to alumni for the first time, hearing their stories, which were so amazing, and really being able to shine a bright light on who they are, what they do. They're so humble, right? Our students, our alumni, they're very humble, and I feel like they needed somebody to be their voice and kind of tell the great stories that were hidden there at the college. And that really became my goal. I became very passionate about the place because just the faculty were wonderful, the alumni were wonderful. When we reached out, nobody had really reached out before. And I remember saying to Dr. Ann, we could reach out. It doesn't mean they're going to reach back, but I have to say our alumni are the most incredible people, and I love being able to share their stories.
And I want to come back to the alumni you mentioned, because I think what is such an interesting story about Johnson College, back in the day, way back, people could go there for free. How did that work?
Yeah. So because of Orlando,
My neighbor was one of them.
That's right.
He's a golden alumni.
Golden alumni.
One of my favorite neighbors, Dennis.
That's
yes.
right.
So he's a golden alumni. But how did that work back in the day?
Yeah, so because of like Orlando's trust, he had enough money where students could go for free, and it started more as a high school, and then as it evolved and became a college, and became like a technical institute. That's when there started to be more like a tuition based.
Okay. And Katie, how do you respond to parents when they say, what's the difference between your college and maybe a traditional college and university? Like, why should
Sure.
my kid come there versus another place?
Yeah, so it's great, if you want hands-on. We pride ourselves in hands-on. Our faculty come directly out of the industries like in which we're teaching. So we'll take automotive, for example. They're up on like what's coming, electric vehicles, like all of that technology, and they bring that to our students. But, for parents, I like to say, like, think about the cost, right? But think about job placement. I think we all want our kids to be happy and, successful, whatever that looks like. And, that means oftentimes they need to be able to support themselves. So I always say, whether you're looking at a 2-year school or 4-year school, always ask about the job placement. What's their connection to the employers, like in those fields of study that their child is going for? And then
Because
ask
a lot
about
of
the
people get out of
placement.
college or universities, right? And then they're like, I can't find a job.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
What do you guys do? You do some different stuff there to make sure most of the time, I want to say there's a certain percentage you have where people, when they graduate from Johnson College, they're already in the workforce. And you even have programs in place. I think that I was part of covering it when I worked in television. Like, you were already immersing people in businesses before they graduated.
We are, yeah. So we've always had a really strong internship program, and that leads to our high job placement rate. I would say a majority of our students, since I've been there, have a job, at least one job offer before they cross the stage at commencement. Many of them are already working. So I wanted to take that experience and get students out into industry even sooner, especially because there is just such a growing demand. So we started what's called industry immersion. So some students, we have them for 4 semesters, if they're in one of our 2-year programs. So that's not a long time. So, but by their end of first semester going into their second, I want them out there, and industry wants them out there. So sometimes they'll take their lab task sheet and they'll actually do their labs out at an industry partner. So it gets the student exposed to that industry partner sooner, and it gets our industry partners exposed to our students in our talent pool that much sooner. So it's a win-win for everybody. And we also have some labs, actually the whole lab is out in industry. We have labs going at Simplex, we have labs going at 5-Star Equipment, Don's Machine Shop. We just did a whole program rollout.
Where literally that's
at
the
airport.
classroom.
Yeah, so industry is their campus. That's what I always like to say. I loved NYU, growing up in New York, because that's their thing. This city, New York City, is the students' campus. So I wanted to sort of take that concept and bring it to Johnson College, but be staying true to who we are and saying, industry is our students' campus. You look around anywhere, more than likely a Johnson College student is there.
And it goes along with the slogan of Johnson College, which is
We work.
We work. We work. Nobody works like you.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's our value proposition. I wrote a lot about this when I was getting my master's, and it's something that, we take very seriously. When we were rebranding, there was some, we were getting some feedback that, we should scrap We Work. We had it actually forever. It wasn't something that I brought to the college. And I was like, I don't know. I think there's something to that. So we did what you do when you rebrand, and, you test it, and it still resonated with people.
Isn't a rebrand a pain? We, as a marketing agency for my full-time gig, right?
Yeah.
We're always looking, how do we help elevate a client's brand? And we even struggle that with ourselves.
Yeah.
We're like, what's our tagline? Because you got to think, what's the thing we're going to remember? And I love yours, though. And I remember forever just being like, at Johnson College, we work.
Right. And I think it just speaks, to really who we are, whether you're a student, because, nothing, sometimes it drives me crazy when people say, oh, people don't, want to work, or young people don't want to work. And I'm like, well, come to Johnson College. We have 600 students that are ready, they are work ready, and they're in demand, and they love to work. So I think it embodies the tag that We Work embodies what they're made of. And I also think for our industry partners, it really speaks to who they are, because they're really the ones fueling this economy in Northeastern PA.
I want to come back to what you said, like the buzz, the vibe. Some people think like this generation, Gen Z, even like the millennials, right? Oh, some people still don't want to work, right? Tell me your key demographic enrolling at Johnson College. Is it people right out of high school? Or are you finding more people who maybe did a gig, didn't like it, they're coming there to school and they're 30 and 40 years old?
So our average age of student is about 21, 22 years old. We get a lot of transfer students. So individuals that maybe thought, there was only one pathway to success, and that meant like the traditional 4-year route, or they started in a completely different field. Typically it is, a lot like, English majors, but sometimes we have people coming from like other, technical fields as well. And they just know they want to do something different. They need to like pay down, their debt, and they just want to make a really good living and have a good career and be happy. So we see a lot of transfer students, but our traditional high school age student has increased over the last few years as well, because we introduced that industry fast track program.
And what is that? Let's unpack it.
Yeah, so students, it's really targeted to juniors and seniors, but they can start taking college level classes, Johnson College classes, in their junior year or senior year. And we've had some students who had enough time to take like one of our academic certificates, so they end up with their welding certificate from us before they even graduate from high school.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Really cool. I read a statistic as well, and correct me if I'm wrong here. Under your leadership, Johnson College was ranked number 10 on the Forbes top 25 2-year trade schools. So tell me about some of the strategies that contributed to that success, and what did that mean when that came out?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, like that I think is just attributed to us always being true to ourselves. There was pressure over the years before, trades and technical schools, became kind of like the buzzy thing, and experiential learning became like the buzz term. There was a time where, we weren't the cool kids, right? And I think there was a lot of pressure to maybe be kind of stray from our core mission of a trade and technical school. And I just, we just like kept at it. And I said, nope, like this is our core strength. This is who we are. Our trade programs have always been consistent. We never had those big drop-offs in enrollment like a lot of the other schools experience. So while we remain small, I think staying true to who we are really attributed to that, because we just got really, really, really good at it. I mean, our reputation is outstanding. Our faculty's reputation is outstanding in this region. Employers have told me, so this is from the employers, this isn't just me making it up. Employers have said if they have 2 resumes in front of them, and one of them is a Johnson College graduate and another isn't, being just a Johnson College graduate before they even meet the prospective employee puts them at the top in that employer's mind. So it was really just staying true to who we are and growing from there, and not sort of like looking at maybe the expectations of other people and saying, yeah, it'd be easy to add this program or add that program and grow that way. That wasn't for us.
Let's come back to that, because from what I understand as well, as president and CEO of Johnson College, you launched 6 new programs under your leadership. Tell me about what those programs are, but walk me through your mindset when you're trying to come up with these strategies and initiatives and then execute them.
Yeah. So again, it's, about our connection to industry. We listen to prospective students. So whenever our enrollment team is out, I always, check in and ask the enrollment team, well, is there something they're asking for that we don't have? That's how we started our heavy equipment technology program.
And what is that?
But so heavy equipment. So is
that like operating a crane?
Well, it's actually fixing
okay.
all the equipment that you see right now. It's construction season in northeastern Pennsylvania. So as you're driving down the highway and you see all of the equipment that goes into those projects, our students are able to fix all of that equipment. And it's a little, different from diesel, a little different from auto, the technology. But that's one program that, we're operating out with an industry partner at 5 Star in Dunmore. So
and that's one of the 6 you launched?
Mm-hmm,
Tell me about some of the others, by the way. And,
yeah.
I think what I'm so fascinated with your leadership and what you do at your school so many times, because, I taught at a university back in the day part-time. My mom has worked there. Sometimes at universities, there's so much red tape to cut through, and it's years. I'm talking years to get anything done. So one, how do you get this stuff done so fast? And what were the other programs you said, let's initiate these because these are going to make an impact?
Sure. Yeah. So I would say heavy equipment is one example of something that was sort of prospective student driven with the demand. Another good example, though, of something that was industry driven is our latest program, which is aviation technology. So it's a 2-year program, again, under that transportation suite of programs where it's, all airframe and power plant. Students will learn everything from like the nose to the tail, how to fix it all, how to get, the planes back up and running. And we actually had, Carl Beardsley from the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Airport actually approached us about it and said, looking at the demographics and the demand, he's like, there's just going to be such a need for airplane mechanics, like over the next, 10, 20 plus years. So that was in one instance where industry approached us and, helped us compile the data to make the case for this program.
And what were some of the other programs then?
So we have industrial technology. We always said we've had a 1-year welding academic certificate. We added a 2-year welding and fabrication program. Industrial technology, building property maintenance, which is a cool interdisciplinary program of our, carpentry. They get a little bit of carpentry, HVAC, electrical, and it kind of come out with like a really solid 1-year academic certificate.
I think hearing all of this now and coming back when you mentioned some of the students enrolling there are transfer students. What's the help that's out there? Because, out of COVID, right, there's all this buzz like student loans, we're going to pause your student loans.
Yeah.
People are still really scared of that, student
Yeah.
loans and going into debt. So has anything changed with the help that schools or colleges are offering students
Yeah.
and some of the partnerships you have with companies?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't, so majority of our students get some type of financial aid. We try to take the fear out of what it means to have a student loan. But in addition to that, I would say the programs that the employers that we work with have in place, they've always been there. I think now, though, between us and the employers, they're really, they understand the need to talk about this. When they come in and talk to our students about their careers and having a career with their company, they really stress, hey, I know you come out with less debt to begin with. It's a 2-year school. Our average, student loan repayment, I think, is $124 a month for students, or maybe it's $224. But the employer stepping up and saying, we'll help you with that. Like I said, we've had employers that we've worked with for years that have had these programs in place. Again, some of it's tuition, the traditional tuition reimbursement programs that you hear about, but some of it too is you come here, you pass your 30, 60, 90-day review, you're doing well, we'll give you a whole separate check stipend that just goes towards your student loan. So I think it's, some of these programs have always been there. It's just encouraging employers to really make sure that they highlight those programs when they're talking to prospective employees.
And we mentioned about the 6 new programs you've launched since you've been there under your leadership. I mentioned before the execution process, right? And actually implementing this, because
Yeah.
I think there's so many places and companies, and I've worked for them, they love the idea of innovation, but they
Yeah.
don't like to execute it, right? Let's talk about ideas, but let's not actually do it.
Yeah.
How do you get this stuff done so fast? Because everybody says in the world of academia, it takes forever. I've been there, right? And I
Right.
know people who work in
Yeah.
it. So what did you do? How do you cut through the red tape so quick?
Sure. Well, I think we're really fortunate that we are a 2-year private institution. So I think that in and of itself, the way that we're structured, lends itself to being able to innovate quickly. You have an idea, put it in place.
Right, but if Dr.
and we
Katie
go.
Leonard has an idea, how many people or boards do you have to go in front of to get it done?
Oh, I mean, we do have a board of directors, so we have a 23 board members, but they're very supportive too. So because it's made up of alumni and industry folks, so again, they understand, yeah, it's all about speed. And we made some fundamental changes a few years ago when I was in different positions, because I knew we needed to be able to move faster. Our institutional accreditation was wonderful, but it was holding us back a little bit. So we actually made the decision to go through the process of changing our entire institutional accreditation, because under our old accreditation, it was a little slower for us to be able to respond to that industry demand. So now switching, it's just all about continuous improvement. So we just say, we need to do this because there's a demand and we need to serve, not just prospective of students, but the employers in the area, and they're very supportive, and we move.
And of course, I follow you on social media. You do work with a lot of different people in different industries, different universities and colleges. You have interesting stories to tell, though, because sometimes people say, Katie, that was a great idea. How long did that take to happen, right?
That's right.
And I think in other worlds of like academia, like universities with all these boards, people tell you stories and you're like, wait, it takes how long for you guys to do anything?
Right. Well, and I think, it's like anything. There's different structures at different organizations, and I think higher ed tends to be more of a bureaucracy. We like our committees. We do, and we need those committees for
they love a good committee.
They do, and we do too. And sometimes it drives us nuts, but that's one advantage too of being small. But I remember when I started here, and I went to an event at another, at another institution, and I think I was talking to a faculty member, and they were so excited, and they said, "Oh my gosh, this idea that we had, it's finally coming to fruition, and it was quick for the university." And I was like, "Well, what's quick?" And she said 2 years, and I was like, "What did I get myself into? If it takes me 2 years to do anything at Johnson College, I'm not sure higher ed is for me." And I remember going back and having a conversation with my predecessor, Dr. Ann, and she was just like, "No, like we can do things. Our board is supportive, and we can do things a lot faster than that." And we still have committees, but again, because we're small and we know each other so well, we have an idea and we go with it. And
everybody knows what their superpower is.
Absolutely. And like I said, I think it goes back to us all just being kind of true to who we are.
Yeah. Let's talk, coming back to your predecessor, Dr. Ann Popinski. Great woman, known her. So you're in Johnson College for a while. You're doing marketing for a bit. At what point were you starting to be like, groom for the job of CEO and president? When did that antenna go up to be like, oh my gosh, maybe this could happen? Because at the time you were getting your master's and other stuff, right?
I was, yeah. So I think as I was doing more and more, and any opportunity Dr. Ann presented to me, I said yes, because I just thought it was a great experience, whether I stayed at Johnson College or went somewhere else. So I think too, I always enjoyed fundraising and building relationships. So I knew that was something that would set me apart if I wanted to do something else in higher ed or anywhere really, because people say that they don't like asking for money. And I'm like, well, it's really less about that and more about building relationships. And I love people and hearing their stories. So as I was doing more and more, Dr. Ann, I think we were out on a fundraising trip somewhere. And she very quietly told me that she was going to be retiring. And of course, at first I have to let that sink in, because here's my mentor and someone that I just enjoy, truly enjoyed working with so much, telling me she's retiring. So there's that. And then, she says, I really think you should think about getting your doctorate, because I think, if they do a search, if they, or whatever the board ends up doing, she's like, I really think you should put your name forward for that. And I was like, what?
What was that process like though? Because when you saw the light at the end of the tunnel, and you're like, this could be something I could go after.
Yeah.
What was the competition like?
I really don't know. I mean, for it, any search is tough. And I think being the internal candidate during a search is even tougher. I think, search firms, people will tell you no, you have the advantage. You have but this is just my personal experience. I didn't find it that way. I think part of it was me psyching myself out, because all of a sudden the board knows that you're now the candidate. It changes things, right? It changes your relationships with people. It changed, and it was a long road. It was, Dr. Ann announced early. I think we all thought she was doing everybody a favor by announcing early and giving the board time, but it just became a very long process. And it
years
was,
where you're like, I don't know if I'm going to get this job.
Well, I think it was more, it was like a good year and a half. Cause again, I knew before she told a lot of other people. So, and I didn't know if I was going to get it. I mean, it's a national search. I had no prior experience in higher ed. I didn't come up through the teaching side of things, the academic side of things. I knew there was a lot of other people out there that probably had a lot more experience in higher ed than I did. And I was young, at the time. So I think I probably psyched myself out a lot more than, and I've talked, and especially to other women about this. I'm like just stop beat it. We beat ourselves up.
I always say, and I think it was Mel Robbins, the leadership coach, who said this, right? Stop booing yourself off the stage before you get on there. We all do it.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
We all do it. But I think the interesting thing with you, right? here's somebody before you even got into the world of academia. You loved rock bands, rock music, and maybe you thought you'd be managing rock bands or whatever, right? You have tattoos, you're tatted up, you're fun, you're funky.
Yeah.
Did you ever worry, because in the world of academia, right, it's very scholarly, right?
Yes.
And people use words like learned. I love when I hear that at a graduation ceremony, right? I'm like, get the heck out of here.
And pedagogy.
Yeah.
Imagine.
But let's talk about that, because you're hip, you're fly. You came up from the rock band lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
Do students ever be like, I didn't know you had tattoos? I mean, you got sort of a sleeve on your one arm. I mean, I know you keep it covered up for the most part at work, but did you ever worry about some of that stuff? Because you were so Katie, and I love that.
Yeah, I did. And I thought, well, and I was honest, like going through the search process, I said, if I can't bring my whole self or as much of my whole self to this role, then I don't want to do it. Like, this is who I am. And I did for a while. Like, the tattoos are for me, right? Like, anything I do, I'm a firm believer we should do things like for ourselves first, and then everything else just flows, right? So the tattoos are for me. And for a long time, though, I'm like, well, I can't have any tattoos showing. So I always like put them in spots that were hidden. Again, they're just for me. But then during COVID, and it was just constant, and just I thought, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Why am I so afraid? Like, I feel like I'm kicking butt. The college is kicking butt. I've proven like to myself that I can do this. And then I'm like, you know what? I love tattoos. They're an expression of who I am. I think the students, it makes it more relatable. I'm more to the students. And that's when I started like getting more tattoos where people could actually see them and I could talk about them.
I love that. Coming back to you, talk about the students. You know what I've always admired about you, for 16 years, no matter what event it was, if it was a 4 a.m. television live shot, right? Or even just events at the school, you were all in. You're there, you show up, you get dirty, you do the work. Why is that so important to you to really dig in where other, college presidents might be like, I have a million other things I got to do.
Yeah. And we all do. But I think, people need to see that. If you're going to be the person leading the charge and you have, sort of a value proposition as serious as we work, you have to demonstrate that you live it yourself. Like, I'll be the first one to say, I always said, like, if somebody from the news call, we say yes and we figure it out after, and I will be there. And I think, we have to set the example. And I love that place. I love being around our students. So for me, being there at 4 a.m. with our students and getting to talk to them, I mean, that's just like the best thing ever.
Are there any specific student stories that stick with you, that you tell yourself, this is why I do what I do?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. There's one student who recently was going to have to drop out, basically because he hadn't told anybody, but his mom had passed away suddenly, and his name was then on a lot of the bills, and and he got this one bill that was like $2,000, and he was just like, I have to go to work now. I have to go work full time. I'll come back to school. And he was such a good student and such a good person. And the staff at Johnson College really just dug in and figured out a way to help him like pay his bills. And he was so grateful and, stayed in school. And even, so that's one sort of more recent student. But when we look at Ideal Saldi, we're naming our new building Saldi, Ideal Saldi Hall. He graduated in 1949. He used to tell this amazing story about growing up in Jessup, and I guess there used to be a train from Jessup into Scranton, and it cost 5 cents to take the train. And, his family couldn't even afford the 5 cents at the time to take the train to get him to Johnson College. And he was going there to stay out of the coal mines. So he would walk, and he ended up having an amazing career. He was a precision machining graduate, so machinist, but he went on and he had like 18 patents, some of which included the original technology that went into the original digital watch.
Wow.
And he was our first, alum that we received $1 million gift from. And his name will go on that building at the front of campus. And I just think that's an amazing testament to who our students are and how they build like the economy.
I love hearing those student stories, right? That are very memorable to you. I think they're sort of the fire that keep you going.
Absolutely.
But way back in the beginning of this podcast, you mentioned, our families, our kids. We want to point out you're also a mom.
I am, to Sophie.
Yeah, and I've gotten to meet Sophie. She's a rock star. She's now 14 years old.
Yeah.
Describe, what's the example you would try to set for Sophie? Because I think here's mom, right? Living as authentically as she can, tattoos all in, leading all these new initiatives at a college. What was your sort of your MO with your daughter, right? In the day and age, because like you said, you had chats with other women before you started stepping into this role. Mm-hmm. What sort of the conversations or the lessons you've taught your daughter from what you've done in the world of academia?
Yeah, I think I just want her to see me always being myself and encouraging, employees and students to just be yourself. Because like I said earlier, when you do things for yourself and kind of stay true to who you are, and that applies to whether it's you as an individual or the organization you work for and the mission that's represented, I have found like everything else just flows. Like my mom used to say, and I've shared this with Sophie a lot, she said the best line to me and my brother growing up, it was drilled into us, always run your own race. So she meant like you're not in competition with anybody else. You're only in competition with yourself. What do you want to achieve? What do you want your life to look like? Where do you want to go next? And every single day, as long as you're working towards that a little bit, then you have succeeded. So I always carry that with me, and that's something like I've passed along to Sophie. And we love Northeastern Pennsylvania, and I say like, Sophie, like this takes hard work, but hard work can be fun. Again, if you're being true to yourself and you know what you want to do, like, and you get to share it with the world. I mean, that's the magic sauce, I feel like. So I try to tell her and share those stories with her.
I think what's so fascinating about how not only do you get these programs launch so fast, right, to keep up with industry and everything else. I think what's impressive is the record-setting enrollment you guys have had with Johnson College, based in Scranton under your leadership, even before COVID. There's all this buzz, right? And I think a lot of schools face this, like, oh, you only got busy during COVID because people had more time. They could go to school and stuff. Describe for me under your leadership, though, and of course, it's a credit to your amazing team. When did things really pick up? And then you try to keep this train going, because this comes back to everybody buzzes about the academic cliff in 2026 where, oh my God, could universities shut down, right? So tell me, how do you keep that momentum going, and what does that look like? When did that start?
Yeah, well, I will say, I think that was one advantage of being the internal candidate, right? So then I get selected to be president and CEO. So I knew immediately, I knew what like my vision was for the institution, and I knew how to get there. And of course, as you said, it starts with like an amazing team. Like we have an amazing group of people at Johnson College, from the senior leadership team, like everybody. The entire staff is amazing. So we were able to really hit the ground running. And whether it was academics or doing more with industry, I mean, from day one, I think I was announced as president and CEO, but I hadn't officially started yet. But I knew I wanted to get out and start meeting with industry. So that's what I did. I just started going out. I started listening. I started bringing that back. And I said, okay, this is how we stay true to who we are, but expand on that. And that's how the idea of industry immersion came about. That's how, we talked about doing some different things with our internship program, doing more, community service. It started from the very beginning.
Where was enrollment before? And then when did you see it pick up? And tell me the numbers and how it's increased and why that's been record setting.
Sure. So, I remember being there, and like 400 was like a big deal, like getting to 400
a year.
And then,
right.
Is
it a year for the 2-year program?
For both, both years. That's why I set the goal. I'm like, 500, 2020. Like that sounds like a good goal. I want to be at 500. And again, we had never sort of tanked in enrollment. We were always steady. And we made some bigger fundamental changes so that we could accommodate more growth. So we did that back in I would say between 2012 and 2015. So it set us up for like a big leap forward, which then the ambitious goal. So we were in like the 400, like low to mid 400s. And then we exceeded the 500 goal in 2020. And now we're at about 600. So for us, us, like that, that was huge. And now, we're going to be meeting this summer with employees and the board and say, like, what's next for us? Like,
what is next for you? What do you want to
Yeah.
do? Where do you see this school in the next few years? And I guess also we should mention before we get to that, what is the cliff people buzz about in 2026?
Oh, yeah. So, and this was something we started studying when we did our long-term visioning sessions back in like 2012, there was buzz even back then. People just aren't having as many kids as they traditionally have. I look at my own family, my mom, her family, there were 4 kids. Then she had 2 kids. I have 1 child. So just, looking at the demographics, they're shifting. There's not going to be that pool of traditional age students to draw from. So how are schools looking at transfer students or non-traditional students, skilling up an existing workforce when it comes to things like new technology and, automation and, just artificial intelligence and electric vehicle, like all of that stuff. So like that cliff, it's supposed to peak in 2026. So that's why there's a lot of buzz around the year 2026, which seems so long ago when we first talked about it. And now it's right around the corner.
So what do you have to do? I guess we talked about what's
Yeah.
next for Johnson College and
Yeah.
Dr. Katie. What are the big goals in the next 5 years? You're going to see this.
Right. So we just opened our first satellite campus in Hazleton. We have some programs running there. We have welding, industrial technology, electrical, building property maintenance. But something new that we did, again, because of demand, we started a CDL program. And that has just been going gangbusters to the point where we're adding Saturday classes now. So we have a female instructor. She's amazing. We've had a lot of female students in there. So I think looking, at Johnson College as a whole, I think first and foremost, we've increased our diversity of our student body over the last, I would say, 2 to 3 years. So that's definitely a goal of mine. Like I see like a larger, more diverse Johnson College, more females in the trades, because these are really good, good paying jobs and good like jobs for women.
So what do you want to say to the females who see this and they're like, me as a plumber or an auto mechanic? So talented, because I met some of the women there, but like, what would your message be? Because it is a male dominated field.
Right, it is. And that, we've had more females in whether it's welding, diesel, HVAC, carpentry, and just, females, just their attention to detail, their steady hand, the skills that they innately have just lend themselves so well to these types of technical careers, but no one's really ever talked to them about it. So for us, too, the message getting into the high schools and getting there sooner has been really important for us to share that message. And then also doing something that we've expanded that I really want to grow are like after school programs for younger students, because we have to get to them younger. I think we've all talked about that over the years.
That's really cool. I don't know any schools or colleges doing that.
Yeah.
Don't steal Dr. Katie's idea.
So we do after school programs. We do, we've done a lot of summer camps this summer. It was really like an interesting story that, my friends in Wayne County shared was that there's summer camps in Wayne County, but I guess most of them are geared towards the families that come from New York and New Jersey to spend the summer. There weren't really a lot of camps geared towards the local students. So we offered camps through our mobile trailers, which I also see expanding over the next few years. And we bring our mobile trailers, we set them there for a week, and we run STEM camps and building property trades camps and all kinds of camps right out of the mobile trailers. And our goal for that is to create more access for people. So going into those more rural areas where it might be a long, hike for them to get to Scranton or to Hazleton, and running programs like right out of something like a mobile trailer. I mean, it's amazing.
And playing off of what you said with, funding programs, keeping programs alive. Some of those obviously take donations and stuff. And
Yes.
coming back to what you said earlier, you used to help a lot with alumni relations.
Yes.
What is your Katie life hack for people who work in alumni relations at schools or universities? Because I remember when I left my school, I wasn't even like graduated from my master's, like, yo, can you give us some money? And I'm like, I got 80 grand in debt, right?
Yeah.
So what are your tips?
It's interesting because it's actually, alumni relations is a long haul, right? I think people see, Ideal Saldi giving $1 million to Johnson College and like it just happened overnight. That's a relationship that I built with Ideal and his family since I started at Johnson College. And he used to tell this great story about how he went on to other schools, but we were like the only school that really reached out, and I was persistent, and I cared, and he could tell that I was passionate. It wasn't just sort of like, a random relationship I wanted to build, but I was passionate about sharing with him where the college was going and how his donation was truly an investment in the college's future and students like him. And it takes time.
And what's going to be in that new building?
Oh my gosh, it's going to be lab space. It's other classroom space for students. We're going to have a really cool sort of high-tech conference room that students can also use, and then student-facing offices. So
I didn't mean to jump in on you, but I was excited because I remember I saw you even shot some social media videos. I'm like, this building looks insane.
It is insane.
Before we wrap, we got to know the Dr. Caney Leonard at work.
Yeah.
But when you're not boots on the ground on campus, who are you? Oh, there goes our little blanket there on the couch falling. Who are you outside of work? You're involved in a lot of different boards and committees. How do you juggle that? What are those boards and committees, and what do you do to decompress?
Yeah. Well, so I love spending time with Sophie. I think that's,
your daughter, right?
Yeah, first and foremost. But then I've also enjoyed getting involved with the nonprofit NeighborWorks, Northeastern Pennsylvania. They're amazing, small nonprofit doing incredible work. I like to say small and mighty, right? You look around and some of the smaller institutions or nonprofits, they're killing it. And the work that they do, especially in West Side and Carbondale, it's just incredible what they're able to do with volunteers and passionate staff and people who genuinely care about the neighborhoods in which they live. So that's really important to me. If I live someplace, I feel like I have a responsibility to give back. So that organization is very important to me. And beyond that, like, I love being outside. Like I said, Pennsylvania got me hooked with its trees and its mountains, and I love to hike. I'm most comfortable in my hiking shoes, my hiking pants,
and letting the tattoos fly freely.
Yeah, and just being out in the woods, whether it's hiking, biking. That's probably that's the biggest thing that I do to decompress. I get up at 5 a.m. every morning to go for a walk because some days
she's in the 5 a.m. club.
Yeah.
Did you read that book, by the way?
I didn't.
There is a book called The 5 a.m. Club that I just wrapped up, and that's a lot of my life. And I just feel like that hour is like magical for people in all sorts of positions. There's a lot of research that shows a lot of CEOs, executives, and stuff. They're always up by 4 or 5, right? And I just feel like you can just really drill down your day and focus before it blows up.
Yeah, and it's my form of meditation. I wouldn't say I'm a big meditator, but I think, I put my AirPods in and I think about everything and nothing all at once. And there's something I think very special about being outside, even in the winter. Like, I go year round. As long as there's not ice on the ground or crazy wind, like I get up and go, because there's something I think very special about, being like sort of alone and looking up and the stars are out. You really do realize that you're just like one tiny speck in this greater universe. And I think that's very humbling, and it's also very inspiring.
That got deep.
Motivating.
And finally, for men, even women who you're trying to really show this, the trades is such an important field to get into. What would be your message to them? And how can they connect with you? Because I feel like you are so approachable. Your team there is great, but what would be the call to action you would leave people with if they're saying, you know what, I'm 40 years old, I hate my job, and I think it'd be cool to become a plumber. It's never too late.
Yeah.
Or fixing a car.
Absolutely.
What's your message?
I think come and do a shadow day, because you really get to dive into what the program of study is like. So to your point, if you're frustrated, like, oh man, I've always enjoyed tinkering in the garage with my car, or I've always, enjoyed being able to kind of do all these do-it-yourself projects, come and dive a little deeper into that with us. Explore that, during a shadow day. Take a walk around, meet our faculty. I guarantee you meet our faculty, they will get you so fired up to try whatever it is you're thinking of, that you'll be hooked.
You're amazing. Any final thoughts before I let you go?
No, I just think this is, it's been an incredible ride for me, and just being able to, represent Johnson College, especially as a younger woman. It's just, I really look at it as an honor.
You rock.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Katie. I love seeing you thrive, and for knowing you 16 years and just
Thanks.
seeing you level up your game. It's inspiring.
Thank you.
And not only leveling up your game, but so many other people with dreams and aspirations and goals, just by implementing programs that are going to improve the workforce, and stick to your slogan. We work.
That's right.
All
Work
right.
it.
Dr. Katie Leonard in the house. Maybe work it. Maybe that's the next
right.
one, right? Work it. All right. Thanks so much for your time. And thank you for being a part of this edition of The Ryan Leckey Show. I'll see you soon.